Divine Source, Great Spirit, thank you for calling us here today. Grateful to receive your grace and your love and your blessings and to pass them on to those you would call here. Speak to us, speak through us, and show us where the healing is to be found. Grateful for your love, and so it is.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. My name is Yuta, and I'm back with my friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, everyone.
Yeah, welcome back. We felt to come together today, and there's been a topic sort of floating around in mind, and we can sort of summarize it as fixing versus healing. So, as always, we're just coming together in this prayer to see what sort of exploration the Spirit wants us to go on with this. And yeah, I myself have just been sort of sitting with this topic and what's fixing entail and what does healing entail. And to me, fixing, as we're kind of looking at sort of the whole picture of walking on the spiritual path and kind of this whole journey to true healing and awakening from this dream that we seem to find ourselves in. If we're not fully aware of what's going on, our minds really want to go towards fixing stuff on the screen, on this projection screen that is this whole world. Like everything around us can be considered a big screen for our minds to project everything inside onto. All the stuff in our minds gets projected onto the screen to, help us see what's going on inside. And when there's no awareness of that, we really do go into this habit of fixing problems out in the world, fixing our life circumstances, fixing our bodies, trying to fix bigger issues in the world, and maybe go into activism even, and things like that. But I think the way I'm sitting with it is the Spirit is really just showing me that the real fix is in the mind, and the real healing is in the mind. And anything that shows up out on the screen is showing me something inside my mind that needs to be healed, beliefs that need to be healed, concepts that need to be reinterpreted, false ideas that need to be set straight and turned right side up, because everything is upside down. And that's the reason I would even be looking out into the world to, fix anything. Yeah, so I think, as always, this is an exploration, and we'll just see where it wants to take us today. So thank you for joining us in this little journey.
Yeah, so we often seem to repeat stories or parts of our journey. And it's just because this is our experience that we're talking from. And, it's not from a place of training or education or any of that. It's like the down and dirty life PhD course. And, I've shared that I grew up in a family where there was a lot of alcoholism in my immediate family and then throughout my so-called lineage. And so much of the day-to-day was trying to fix or manage, which for me is kind of the same. Trying to manage the day-to-day. And for me, it felt like I grew up in an emergency room, and it felt like I had to be hyper vigilant and hyper aware and paying attention to everything in my environment. And it seemed like the players in my home life, everybody was just trying to address whatever was immediately right in front of them. That was like a big flashing neon sign of help me address this, fix this. It always seemed like, there was a plumbing issue or somebody getting physically hurt or a big fight or, whatever. There just was a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. And I just wanted healing. I really deeply wanted healing. And I remember as a kid, there were some books here and there throughout my house that caught my attention along the way. And, there was a book that was like an Elizabeth Kubler-Ross book. I think it was On Death and Dying. And in there was like conversation about spiritual growth and healing. And I was so drawn to the messages in there. It was like, oh, yes, more of this, please. But I definitely had the programming, as most of us do, but there must be things out there, as you said in the intro, that I'm supposed to fix. So I spent a lot of my life doing that, trying to get the players on the stage the way I thought would be helpful, or trying to get myself to relate to the players on the stage in a way that I thought might get me what I wanted or needed. And I just saw over and over again that that doesn't work. And I actually was spending most of my time and my energy and my mind stuff on trying to figure out solutions and figure out a way to navigate. And I didn't have anybody in my life as a kid that I knew of or that I remember in my day to day telling me, well, actually, you got to go inside for your healing. That was not something that was showing up in my world. And so, again, when you have like an environment where there seems to be a player, like a parent that's got a problem like an addiction, or if you've got a family member that's like got some horrible disease, or that's some other form of disease, then, the energy and the attention often goes to those players, right? Everybody gets kind of fixated and focused on them. And so there was a lot of that misdirected focus and our attention going onto these really dramatic symbols. And when I got my wake up call, it was all about, hey, you, Elizabeth, you need to look at you. I was thinking the other day, I had this thought come up about the first time that I got like a massage, really like a healer, you might say, somebody who really, this was their craft, this was their given gift, to do for people. I was probably in my early 20s, maybe 24, 25. And I was so uncomfortable being touched and massaged. I was so uptight. And she said to me after the massage, she asked me something about myself. And the questions were indicating that she was intuitively picking up like my story. And she basically, in this lovingly, gentle way, basically said, well, at some point you'll have to take a look at that stuff. At some point it would be good for you to start seeing about your emotions and about the way you think. And I felt so exposed, I felt so ashamed and stressed out by her reflection, but I also knew what she was saying. Like we all intuitively know, really deep in our hearts, that's this journey. The journey is to know yourself. The journey is to get right with yourself, even though it's so compelling to go out thinking that you can fix it out there. I feel like we all actually really do know that that light resides within us and that the direct channel, the spirit, is within us. But those early moments of kind of getting that wake up call were really uncomfortable. And I did want healing rather than fixing. And I did know that, like sitting on that massage table, that there was a gateway to healing, but that I was actually still in the fixing kind of space with that journey, with that woman that day. It was more about fixing symptoms and stress and that kind of thing. But the spirit was also taking me into this awareness that actually that kind of a container with a person like that could be a gateway for me to learn about myself, could be a gateway for me to let go of my mind stuff and my judgments and my, resentments and all that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting talk, this fixing versus healing, because there's kind of some overlap at times. And there's kind of again, a gateway from the fixing concept and the fixing experience that the spirit will take us into the actual healing experience. So anyway, that's what's coming up at this moment for what's showing up on this side.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up massage, because one of the biggest sort of experiences that really got me going and got my engine sort of fired up for healing was when the universe brought me together with this Taoist master who at the time he was doing something called meridian dance. And I went to this spiritual expo in York in Pennsylvania. And I went there obviously because you know, I'm already sort of on my path, and like I'm interested in spiritual things and, you know, sort of expanding my mind. And then I saw him and my mind was completely mesmerized because I'd never seen anything like it. He would put somebody on his, it was a massage table basically. He would put them on there and literally would dance the meridians as, you know, he felt intuitively guided. And it was like a mix, right? Because my mind could latch on to the specifics of meridians, and you know, that's sort of the surface piece to it, but I knew that there was something so much deeper going on that was beyond meridians. And you know, because he would sometimes make comments too, you know, about okay, here's your past lifetime as an old lady in China or something, you know. And you know, so the people would be writhing on that table and like yelling out, and it was a show almost. But it was really cool. And I ended up like looking at nothing else at the spiritual expo the whole weekend. I just stood by his table, and he ended up, you know, obviously it's you kind of get noticed, so he ends up pulling me in there and I'm working with him on people. But I think, you know, it's like you said, it's like a mix of obviously people go on there to get fixed, and I went on there. I paid for a session too to see, you know, what would happen, and obviously to fix anything that I might not be aware of. But it like pushed me inward really deeply, and like it was ended up being a catalyst for all these changes in my life that I ended up making. And I'm a little bit still connected to this Taoist master now. We, you know, we reconnect every once in a while. But yeah, I think we can work with the body, which is sort of working with the screen and working with the dream. And if there's an intention of true healing underneath, the body is kind of like a tool, right, for this true healing. And it seems like maybe some things end up getting fixed inside the body seemingly, and at the same time it's like it's a catalyst for, you know, making space sort of to for the actual healing in the mind to take place. And that was sort of like my initial way into seeing that there's a deeper picture beyond what I can see. And it was a very kind of mystical experience to work with him, because he was seeing stuff that I couldn't see, but I just tried to be really present and, you know, allow myself to move and feel and touch people I don't know in ways that I just kind of like felt like I was letting the spirit use my body as a healing tool in those moments. But yeah, like sort of the other thing that's just kind of floating around in my mind is when we talk about this topic of fixing versus healing, to me, fixing always has to do with control and trying to control the world, trying to control the screen, trying to control other people, controlling outcomes. And you know, we always kind of have a little chat before we hit the record button. And I was telling Elizabeth about this show that I've been watching. It's not really a valuable show, other than, you know, it's kind of showing me this theme of this addiction to fixing. Because almost every episode, the main character in this show, she says, I can fix this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this for all of us. And she ends up making things worse. Like it's you can just see there's always fear underneath, and there's an idea, and almost like an arrogant idea, that she knows what the issues are, and on top of that, more arrogance, thinking that she knows how she can fix it. And to me, it is like, when you really look at it, it is an arrogant behavior, right? It's an arrogant sort of pattern to think that you can even know what's best and what's most helpful for yourself and for everybody involved, or even the whole. And it makes me think of, just prayer. Like, my prayers usually entail something like, help me with this, and like, help me see what to do here that's best for me, and it's also best for the whole. So it's a very different kind of approach to come at issues that I might be seeing with prayer and, with the spirit's guidance, versus saying like, okay, here's my issue, and I'm going to look at the little pieces of this issue, and I'm going to rearrange things and, remove pieces and add pieces, and, try to fix this in some way that it'll change something in the world around me, really. And, like, coming from this place of having A Course in Miracles sort of in my repertoire of spiritual teachings, I've said this before, the thing that really spoke to me right away was that it was bringing power back into my mind and telling me that whatever needed to be fixed or healed could be done within my mind, and I didn't have to have this focus on the outside. Because, like you said, to me, having that focus on the world and like all of its complexities, and how do I make a living, and how do I fit into this, and just a very convoluted mix of issues out in the world that I needed to deal with, instead of looking at it from that place of, that's where I need to actually work at things. It was bringing me back into, no, the world you see around you is a reflection of what's going on inside your mind. And so that means whatever is up for healing will be shown to you out in the world, and all of the work that you can do with it or for it or whatever is going to take place inside your mind. And it's going to take place in this kind of quiet space of prayer, and getting in touch with guidance, and getting in touch with this inner teacher who has actually the big picture, because I don't. So if I see issues out there, I'm seeing something very small. It's like I'm seeing a grain of sand of the entire beach and thinking I know, what I'm looking at. But getting in touch with the spirit, he can actually see all of the aspects and knows what's best in really any situation. And it can look then like you're making changes in the world based on the guidance that you're receiving, but it's like a complete turnaround, right? Because you're starting within, and if there's guidance to make changes in life, like, I've been guided to quit jobs like you have, and make, big changes in my life. But that was coming all from this place of prayer, and, going within, and kind of like really wanting to put myself, like, get myself out of the way. And so it's a very different approach to the whole world, really. And yeah, when I think about, the series I've been watching, it's all fear based, and it's control based, and it is this arrogance of thinking you know what's going on, so you know what needs to happen. And that's not a fun place for me to be in. So it's, it's nice to have these reflections of what doesn't work. We do need to know what doesn't work, right? So that we're kind of almost like backed up into a corner of seeing that this doesn't work and we need a better way. Yeah, so those are kind of like some of the stuff, some of the things floating around in my mind when we talk about this topic.
I usually have like a little table altar when we do our talk, a candle, and sometimes they're cards that I've picked as messages for my mind to just kind of settle in. And I have this little ornament that came to me, I don't know where, but it's a clear ornament. It has three wise men going to Bethlehem down this little winding road. And, it's often talked about that Jesus is the master healer. And for those of us that have had the Course be an influence in our minds, there's the idea of true healing, right? Coming, and these teachings coming from Jesus is how it's presented in the Course. And it's just having this, the whole meditation of what a massive disruptor he was in the mind when he showed up. And there were wise men that knew this light was going to show up and wanted to receive the one that was going to be a channel for this light. And there was also an awareness in the mind that a disruptor is coming and, kill all the boys. And, the story of his arrival is pretty dramatic. And there were lots of efforts to fix the stage so that this light couldn't have its way. And that's a pretty dramatic story and pretty dramatic example of the platform that this world seems to be and the lengths to which the ego or the world will go to try to keep the story going of what you're here for in the world's terms. And when we talk about fixing, it's so much about distraction. I mean, you can, as you said in the beginning, somewhere, you could spend eternity trying to fix endless numbers of issues in this world, right? And it is crazy making. Like I'm seeing people in here, I'm tearing my hair out, it doesn't make sense. And we know it. We know it doesn't make sense what we're doing here. And part of our conversation and the messages that Yuta and I were getting before that record button got hit was, are you going to stand in the fierceness of truth? As the spirit heals your mind, as you go along, are you going to stand up for truth? And are you going to stand up for true healing and not default back into the way the world says that you fix things? So Yuta and I have been led into this idea of true forgiveness of the story and true forgiveness of the energetics and the mind stuff on every single issue. Everything we believe about this world has to be put on the altar to be burned up and transmuted back into light. So, it's a fierce conversation, and it requires a toolbox much bigger than any personality is ever going to have. It requires the spiritual big jobs, to be on the scene. And a lot of us know, again, intuitively in our hearts, we've done this for eons, we've reincarnated lifetime after lifetime. We know that we're here for that kind of healing. And yet, as we're going on our journey of having the dismantling unfold, it can feel like we're going to be doing some fixing with the spirit. And it can feel like, oh, I should be doing healing. And for some of us, we are called to sort of be in a healing function, you might say, in terms of how the world thinks about healing. And so, again, this is sort of weird dance in and out of these concepts of fixing and healing. But again, the true healing comes from transcending all these storylines. And we were talking about the body and some of the stuff that you witnessed working with your master at the expo. You know, I get used that same way. I seem to have a way that I read the stories in people's bodies, right? Information shows up. And we've talked before, if you've believed yourself to be real and true as a body and as a human being for millions of eons and gazillions of lifetimes, and if we create this reality structure and it becomes so concretized that we imagine moving particles to be tables and airplanes and bikes and houses and all the rest, well, those storylines seem to be taking up data and space, you might say, in the greater energy field of this universe. And so it seems that there are storylines and energetics beyond what we're just dealing with right here. And the only value in that, the only reason to even talk about it is because all that information has to become, you might say, neutralized. The word forgiveness for a lot of people is confusing. It has lots of different connotations. Some people think, oh, I forgave it means that it was real, and so I've just let it go. For others, we say forgiveness means you realize it could never have been in the mind of God, this thing that we think is happening here, right? So using the word forgiveness in my universe isn't always helpful. But the idea that these things need to be neutralized, you might say, that they need to come to a place of rest, or they need to come to a zero point where they don't have any energy in them to direct anything to be ordered in any kind of form or fashion. Well, sometimes you can get around that idea a little easier than forgiveness. So all of these stories that we've been playing out, or the one mind, if you don't want to think about, okay, maybe Elizabeth didn't have a past life. What do I know? Let's say I didn't. Well, let's just talk about the one mind that seems to have been generating data for eons. If we're going to go back to our just pure light expression, which is the invitation as far as I experience the invitation, that's what Spirit's inviting me to do. Well, I have to then be dismantled and healed of all my beliefs that would call forth any witness, whether it's a witness of a table, because I have a belief about a table in my mind, or whether it's a witness of a murderer coming at me with a gun, or whether it's a witness of a weather event that I think is real and true happening outside of my house, right? These things have to be brought to a place of rest. And so if we're fixing, we're stuck in time, we're stuck in a story, we're stuck in an energetic, and we can spend billions of dollars in governments and millions of dollars in education, and we can fill up resumes of all these different things that we know how to do to fix it and work within it. Or we can say, hey, Spirit, hey, divine source, that all has left me empty and burned out. And I feel you in my head, feel you in my heart, I feel you in my mind, calling me to realize there is another way, but I have to choose it and turn my back on the world. And that is a massive, massive challenge that has to be faced if we want the true healing, because it's such a razor's edge, turning your back on all this programming. So those are kind of our two worlds that we can be directing our attention and energy into. And as we said before, are you going to stand up as you go along in your journey and speak for the fierceness that a lot of people aren't going to want to hear? You know, Yuta and I have been taken on our journey where we've had to stand up within ourselves to speak for that kind of truth, knowing that it's not going to be popular. We were having some internet connection issues earlier. We were having some, I was seemingly sick this morning, right? A lot of seeming distractions to keep us from speaking for this. So what do you have to say?
Yeah, well, it's really kind of crazy, right? It can seem crazy to say that there's nothing to do out in the world. Like it can seem so unpractical and just stupid, right? Like if somebody comes to me and they have all this stuff going on in their life that is wacky and distracting and makes no sense, and maybe there's legal trouble or whatever, it's like there's the mind just really wants to run towards taking care taking care of those things really specifically, and like those are the issues, those are my problems. And I love the symbol of this idea of trying to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic as it's going down,
Mm-hmm.
because like as we step on this path, and we're sort of starting to be aware of like, okay, I have issues and I need help with them. It's like we're on the Titanic going down, and
Mm-hmm.
the thing's gonna break and it's gonna sink and it's gonna like just get destroyed. And our small minds in that situation, they're so focused on the small things, like the deck chairs, moving around and getting tumbled around, and you think that you're going to fix the sinking ship by putting the chairs back into the right places. That's really crazy. If your mind can get in touch with, that's how it is when you get on this healing journey, that you're trying to rearrange these deck chairs, it really is crazy when you look at it that way. So I think there's a huge prayer that has to come in when we get on this path and we want to really get into healing, which is to, well, kind of see the craziness that's going on, and to realize that the mind is really, really addicted to reacting to seeming problems. Like there's always, it's just like an automatic mechanism and solution to react and fix. And
Or to generate, right? Or to
oh yeah,
generate the confusion. Like, forget about react and fix. Let's sabotage our possibility for awakening and just generate a lot of messiness, right?
yeah,
I was having the Ozark. You were mentioning your TV show. The
oh
Ozark
yeah,
was one that you to,
oh
and
my
I
god,
watched when we were
yes,
together. So anyway, it just popped in,
yeah,
that
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
idea.
you're right. The Ozark is exactly, that's the same kind of vibe. It's just exactly like there's, and in the show that I'm watching, like there's a lot of like trying to keep things hidden, and
Mm,
keeping things hidden to protect people and protect
mm,
yourself. And it just goes absolutely nuts. And How to Get Away with Murder, that's what the show's called, and that's what they're trying to do. And these people are lawyers, so it's really, really wacky.
mhm.
When you don't know what you're really here for, and what true healing really entails. And of course, like I can look back in my life and I've been in situations where it seems like I needed to know what to do here and there, obviously, like, but it's such a beautiful path to me because it's so practical, and we always talk about the practical pieces of this. When we get in touch with this inner teacher, we get all of the bits and pieces, practically speaking, that may need to happen out in the world. And, maybe we need to fill out some forms, or we need to pay this bill. And sometimes it does look like maybe we need to talk to a lawyer, for, I don't know, just some seeming guidance that relates to the world. But it's like you come at it from a completely different place. It's a complete turnaround to the way we normally think about problems and dealing with problems. Like if somebody comes to me with some issue in their life, like, I don't know how to deal with these taxes because I lived in this country and now I'm over here, and like if I work, what happens with taxes? And the spirit's going to be really, really practical, and it may look like you're doing exactly what you would be doing if you weren't praying to the spirit for steps. But the experience is one of like true safety and real rest. And it's not this running around for solutions. It's really, going into prayer and receiving the guidance and then following the steps. Because, like you said, we do think we're bodies. So the spirit will work with us from a place of that perception that we're bodies. And we do seem to find ourselves in a world of specifics. So guidance can come through really specifically to specific issues that we seem to find ourselves in. And, when people come to me for help, I'm not throwing spiritual concepts at them. We actually look at the specifics and we get quiet and we try to hear what could possibly be helpful in this situation. And it's always this step into quietness that really brings in the steps that are truly helpful. And it is a fierce process, like you said. Like you have to be kind of fierce and speak to your mind and say, okay, we have to go into prayer now. We're not going to look at the specifics for a moment. They will be handled, but they will be handled from a place of prayer. So it's a funny paradox sort of kind of dance. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it just takes place in the mind, and most of it is a shift in perception. And you're talking about forgiveness, and yeah, sometimes people wonder what that really entails, and simply put, it's a shift in perception from fear to love. And we're trying to be loving and gentle with our minds on this path. And so we've really learned that in order to be gentle and loving, we have to go inside and take care of things inside. And sometimes that will look like we end up taking steps out in the world as well. But they're coming from, we had this conversation about knowledge versus wisdom. Like when we do then take the steps out there, it comes from this place of inner wisdom, and not so much from things we've learned about how this world seems to operate. So yeah, it's a whole change in how we approach the world and ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful way you wrap it up, Yuta. That the answers and the guidance for true healing will come in through the spirit, through our inner guide, in the silence often. And yeah, things just aren't always as they appear to be. I was just having this whole idea, like a lot of people often think of healing as the body. Healing the body is often the way people think about it, not healing the mind. And, I've just been shown over and over again that a person can die of a heart attack and they could have healed eons in that lifetime. And that to judge healing from a symptom or from an end result or any of that stuff, it's just missing the boat. That, as you said, our perceptions, our way of seeing and being shown by the spirit what's really going on is where we get those bits of wisdom and insight that then translate into all these other areas of our lives and our minds. And so, yeah, we've just been shown time and again that the healing is within, that the healing is guided by the spirit, and it's available to everyone. And it is, in my way of seeing it, it's everyone's job. It's really your only job. And so if you are feeling frustrated with life and not understanding what's going on out on the world stage, welcome. Been there. It's not a place I was able to find any answers, but you're welcome to come with us on this journey within the mind. And that's really what we're offering here. It's
Mm.
our own fumbling with spirit to be shown, the way out of, for me, what is hell, and into a state of mind that feels much more like I'm being led into heaven. And yeah, it's an amazing journey. So I'm
Mm.
really grateful, Yuta, that you brought this through this morning. This floated out there here and there over the weeks, but Yuta landed the container today, and it's been great. Any last words from you?
Yeah, well, I think it's just, it's always an invitation into simplicity because the world is so
Mm,
complex and
yeah.
it's so difficult to deal with complexity because our minds just really aren't capable of doing it. And we can try and try and try and get really tired and burned out and get sick and die. Or we can land in this simplicity of getting in touch with this inner teacher that knows exactly what's needed, and we can just follow that. Our lives end up being much simpler. Our minds feel simpler. They think in a more simple way. Oh, I got a problem? Okay, I'll pray. How simple is that? It's just lovely. So that's the invitation that the Spirit has for all of us, like you said. And that's what we're inviting others into as well with these kind of conversations. So, yeah, I'm grateful and thank you for joining me in this, Elizabeth. And thanks for anybody who's listening. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.